Hey developers! So today we are deep diving into Firebase again. In our previous video, we created this cool app where we are able to log in, log out using the Firebase Authentication with our Vue.js app. Today we're going to see how we can use our Firebase app and grab the ID token to send to the backend to do authentication and then unlock certain routes and certain data. So make sure you stay all the way to the end to find out how that works. But before we get started, before we get too far, let's have a quick word from our sponsor. Hey, before we get started, I need to thank Simplilearn for sponsoring this video and providing all of you with 30% off their Python data science course that was co-developed with IBM. This course contains 68 hours of high-quality content teaching you modules like NumPy, SciPy, Pandas, scikit-learn, and Matplotlib. You'll learn the essential concepts of Python programming and gain deep knowledge in data analytics, machine learning, data visualization, web scraping, and natural language processing. You'll apply these skills in 4 real-life industry-based projects and be eligible to receive an IBM Simplilearn Joint Certificate after completing 85% of the course. So make sure you click on the link in the description below. It has, you can click on it and you'll be able to sign up for the course and get the discount. So make sure you click on that link in the description of the course. Hey, and before I'm done with the sponsorship, I just want to let you guys know I've been doing this course myself. I've been going through the course overview, learning all about this data science with Python, and I'm learning a ton. I've just kind of started, but it's really well done and really in depth. I'm really enjoying it. It doesn't just have videos, it has quizzes. It has these knowledge checks like throughout the course. Like this one I just tried it here a second ago. I got 2 wrong. I just guessed 0% correct. But it really not just teaches you how to be, data science with Python, but it quizzes you and makes sure that you're paying attention. And it has this awesome practice labs. It has these 4 assignments that you can do, and it has live classes. So I can sign up for these live classes, get actual help from an instructor, and learn that way as well. So this isn't something you do in isolation. This isn't just a bunch of videos. This is just a ton of information, quizzes, knowledge checks, practice labs, assignments, live classes. It's just well worth taking a look at. So make sure you click on that link in the description below. Thanks. Hey, and if you don't know and you're new to this video series, my name is Erik. I'm a full-stack software developer. I'm also a big fan of Vue.js and Angular and React. I'm a real big web development fan. So if you guys are interested in those type of videos, interested in learning a lot about Vue.js specifically on this video, make sure you click that subscribe button at the bottom. And also let me know in the description, in the comments below, what you think of Firebase. Have you used it in the past? I'd love to hear some comments. Make sure you leave a comment below. So here is the app that we're trying to build. So from my last video, you saw actually I can type in a username here. Here's a login and a password. If I click login, then it automatically goes to the secret route, and you can see here this data that's being returned. Now this data is all being returned from my backend API, which actually is contacting another API. If you've watched a few of my previous videos, I did a video on the Breaking Bad API with Quasar. So actually I'm grabbing all this information from the backend API, and it's using Breaking Bad API. So it's kind of neat. So that's what we're building today. So this is going to be a lot of me jumping into the Visual Studio Code editor and creating this backend API. And we're going to use Node and Express and TypeScript. All right. So here's the directory structure. I have my front end. That's all the app that you've seen so far. And then I have this Fire token. So I'm going to open up a new bash terminal here. And it's already set up in the back end. I'm going to change directories to Fire token. And to get started, I need to install a few dependencies. So first, I want to run npm init. And when you run npm init, that's going to go ahead and basically ask you a bunch of questions about your project. And then you can just pretty much hit enter all the way through, and that'll create a package.json file. So if I do npm init here, I can just hit enter all the way through, and it says, okay, yes, this is fine. Yes. Now to actually install the dependencies we need, what we need to do now is install the dependencies. So I'll go over them. So the first we have dev dependencies, and then we have normal dependencies. So our just normal dependencies, we'll do npm. And by the way, if you're not familiar with, this is Node. I'm using Node 10, I believe. Node -- version 10.8. I mean, certainly if you're in 11 or 12, you're fine. But that's the version I'm using. And if you don't know how to do that, just go to nodejs.org and install Node into your local Windows, Mac, whatever operating system you use. And that'll also come with npm, which will be installed for you. And if you're a Yarn fan, these are the same steps, just replace Node or an npm with Yarn. So let's do the npm install, and I want to install Axios, Cores, Express, and the most important one we want to install is this Firebase admin. And this is going to kind of give us the tools that we'll need to be able to, give us the tools that we need to be able to do the verification, the token, and everything that we need there. So we'll just hit enter here, and it'll just take a minute and it'll be installed. Okay, so all those are installed now, and now we need to do the dev dependencies. So we're going to be using Typescript. So one thing we want to do here is make sure we install Typescript. And then we're going to have all these @types. So we want our types. So anytime you use Typescript, you want to actually get the types. That way when you're using your editor, it has this autocomplete feature and you can see what's available. And those are usually always @types and then / and then whatever package name. So obviously Axios is one of them. We have Cores, we have Express, and we have Node. And then also I want TS Node and TSLint. And yeah, I think that should be it. And then to make sure it installs as a dev dependency, not a normal dependency, I'll put a capital D here. And that will just take a moment to install. Okay, there's one other thing we need to install, and that is we're going to use something called nodemon. So you just need to do npm install tacg nodemon. And so we're going to use that in our package.json file. And one other thing is we need to get a tsconfig file. So you can generate a tsconfig file pretty easily, but what I'm going to do is if you look in the bottom in the description, I'll have a link to the GitHub for this project. So instead of trying to generate a TypeScript tsconfig file, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste one. So I'm going to bring in here Fire Token. I actually went ahead and off camera, I created this tsconfig JSON file and just copy and pasted everything in here. So if you want this configuration, which works great for me, then just go to the GitHub link below and you can copy and paste this. And basically the tsconfig file gives you like what sort of things it's looking for. So these are like rules that you have in place for your TypeScript, like where the output directory is, what your target is, like I'm targeting ECMAScript 6, and that I don't have no implicit any's, that these are just different rules so that when I write TypeScript, these will be in there. Emit decorator, metadata, experimental decorators is really important. Like this is kind of interesting. Allow synthetic default imports. Allow default imports from modules with no default export. So this is a way you can import in things that don't have default imports and exports. So I'll show you how that works. So cool. So we got that in there. And there's one other thing we need to really get this working. So if you go into your Firebase project, you have an option in here, and I believe it's under, let's see here, authentication, project settings maybe. Let's see, users and permissions. Oh, no, maybe it's service counts. Right here. So you can click here and that'll generate a private key. And what you need to do is once you generate that private key, it's going to give you, let's see, if you click here, well, I'm not going to generate it again. It'll give you a key that you then can put inside your project folder. So I went ahead and already did that off camera here. These are the two files I did off camera. I created this project folder. I also created this source folder. There's nothing in there. So, and now I can, if I run this command right here, export Google application credentials, and then I put the path of where this file is, this will allow me to, these will be the credentials it uses. This way, that way, I don't have to manually reference it inside the app itself, and it just makes things a little bit easier. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, cool. So I went ahead and exported that Google application credentials. And now what I can do is I can create a new file, which I'm gonna call Firebase service.ts file. And this file is the file that I'm going to set up the Firebase admin. So I'm going to do an import star as admin from Firebase admin. That's good. All right. So we'll, since we have that, let's see if we can just get the index file. Let's see if we can get a new file working. But before we do that, let's go to our package.json. And I want to add, so I have my core dependencies here. I have my dependencies, my dev dependencies. What I'm going to do is, I already went ahead and changed it here. So just add the start. I put nodemon exec ts node source index.ts, and that way it'll try to run the index TypeScript file using ts node, which allow us to have a nodemon, which allows us to have like hot reloading, and it'll go ahead and compile the TypeScript and run it. So I'm going to create a new file here called index.ts. And let's see if we can just get it working with Express. So I'm going to import star as Express from Express. And I believe that if our tsconfig file, this allows synthetic default imports. That'll actually help us do this with Express. I'm going to import star as cores from cores. And then let's just see if we can get this working. So I'm going to do app, I'm going to do express. And then I'm going to put a port, I don't know, 3001. Well, let's do 3000. And then if we do app.use, you can set cores up. So we'll just do this. This will allow us to do cores. We'll be worrying about that later. And then we'll do an app.get. And really we want a response and a value, a request and response. Essentially that's what these are. That's a request. And I just want to return a hello world. And right now it's going to give us, well, once we do the app.get there, we need to do the listen. So we'll do app.listen, which will pass in the port, and then we'll just say, did it work? Working on port. Okay. So we have everything in place. Let's just try to run it. npm run start. So it's running the nodemon for the TypeScript for index.ts. Oops, it crashed. So it says rec is declared, but its values isn't ever read. So one thing we can do for that, I believe we can just do underscore. So let's see here. Okay, it says it's talking on local port 3000. So localhost 3000. Cool, so we see our hello world. Yeah, that's working great. Let me close out a few things here. Cool. So we definitely have our TypeScript app running. But that's not going to help us too much because it was just a hello world on port 3000. So what I want to do is I want to create another route here. So I'm going to create another route. And this time I'm going to do slash Erik. And then this time I want to actually go and grab some data from our Breaking Bad API. So to do that, I'm going to create a new variable here, a new function. I'm going to call it send request. And that one is going to do this const characters. And it's just going to grab the characters from the Breaking Bad API. So if you look online, there's a really simple Breaking Bad API. And I'm actually going to use Axios, which I believe I installed. So I'm going to import, I think it's just Axios from Axios. So I'm going to wait Axios, and I'm going to do a get on it. And from there, I'm going to put in the URL, which I'm going to copy it from a different screen. Cool, so there's the Breaking Bad API. And then this is just going to return characters, assuming it didn't have any problems. So from here, what I can do is I can make this an async function as well. And really this send request is going to be returning a promise. So I'm going to put got_val await this send request. And then I'm going to just return it in here. So, and now I do need a response for this app.get. So this async function right here, there's really this and a response. Now you're probably thinking I have Typescript. I could probably do a little extra here. Instead of just having a response, I can actually use the express.response, I believe it is, right here. And now I can actually see, I can see all the different values, get, send, and my response. So that's pretty helpful. So now this should, every time I go to /Erik, it should return back a JSON payload. So let's see here. Let's see if it works. All right, here it is. Here's our big payload of everything from the API. Cool. So yeah, we're making progress. Now we want to prevent someone that's not authenticated from getting into this Erik route. And if you have dealt with Express and Node at any time, you probably heard of middlewares, and that is a piece of code that we can have run while things are working. So essentially we have like a request and response, but we also have a next. So we can have code that's ran before different pieces of this is run. So let me show you how I'll do that. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it auth middleware.ts. And this is what, first I'm going to import admin from that Firebase service. And where's the Firebase service that I added earlier? You know, I think one of the reasons this wasn't working is I don't have it in the right folder. I'm going to move it to this folder. There we go. And now I don't have any errors here. Cool. So now this auth middleware, I have this Firebase service. So it's basically taking this, where is it? This Firebase initial app. It exports the admin from here, and now I can use it. So if you look here, admin, we have all these different values that are available for us. And the one that we really care about is auth. And you could see here, I like it how it tells you, like, get the link app service for the default app or given app can be called with no arguments to access default apps service. But what we can do here, now if we put a dot here, we can look for verify ID token or revoke. We can even like revoke refresh tokens. And so what this does is we can pass in the ID token in here and it'll tell us if it's correct or not. So we want the front end to pass this to us. So we're going to do that. So let's just go ahead and comment that out. So I'm going to create this middleware with, it's going to be called get auth token. and it's gonna be, we're gonna have a request, and which will be the request and response, but we don't really care about the response. And then we'll have a next. Let's see here. And then this request and response next, we're gonna do stuff with it. So if we're gonna have our request coming in, and by the way, since we're using TypeScript, why don't we figure out what's in request? So if we type request dot, we don't see anything, but we know that this is an express request, which is easy enough. So now if I do a req dot, so we see if we here do request dot, we don't see anything here, but we know since we're using TypeScript that we can use different expressions. So we can actually define it as an express.request. And what we need to do is, since we don't have anything in express in here, we're just going to copy and paste that in here. And then also for this next, we'll just put this at the bottom because we'll be using it. So now let's see if this works. So we do request dot, cool. Now I get all the different values for request. So we want to do request dot headers. And then we want to look at the authorization header that comes through. And then we'll say if it's there, we want to go back to headers again, and the authorization is there, then we'll split it for every space, and then we'll grab the first one, and we'll check to see if it equals bearer. So what we're doing here is we're checking to see if the authorization's there, and then if it is there, we're splitting it, and we're grabbing the checking the first value if equals bearer. So because what we're going to do in the front end is we're going to create an authorization header that looks like this. It's going to be authorization, and it's going to have bearer, something like this, and then it'll have like the ID token. That's how it's going to be sent over. So we just want to make sure that that we're looking at it correctly and it has the bearer token in it. So then if that's true, then we want to grab the request, and this time we're going to grab the auth token. We're going to basically create a brand new parameter on the request called auth token, and we're going to set that to the headers.authorization, and then we're going to split it. And then we're going to grab the second one, which would be this ID token. And we're just going to have that added to the auth token. Now it's giving us, I believe, an error here that doesn't exist. Okay, so we have a little bit of a problem here that since I'm using the express.request here, that it doesn't recognize this auth token. So I could do a few things here. I could make this any, but then I lose my types. I could also, one thing I could also do is create my own interface. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So I could do import. So I'm gonna go ahead and I can create my own interface. So if I do something like this, so this is an interface I have. I actually got this off of Stack Overflow, but it's basically interface I request. If I extend request, so in this case, I'm going to extend express.request. Now, anytime I can have basically this key string, any, means that I can use any other extra string I want to extend onto this. So instead of doing the request of express.request, I could do iRequest. And now that's cool. So now I have the request auth token, but I still have my everything that I would normally get with everything I normally get with Express. So it's all there. Cool. So that's a little trick there if you ever run into that problem with types. So I can also do this request, and I'm going to put the auth token to null. So what this is saying is that, let me close this editor here, that if this generate auth token, And by the way, it says next doesn't have a type, so I'll just add it as any for this one. So if I have this request header authorization and that it has a bear, then I'm going to put it inside the auth token on the request object here. That's all it's doing. So now we want to actually kind of work with it. So we're going to create a new, this is where we're going to actually export out. We're going to export out a check if authenticated. And that's going to, this check if authenticated is going to take in some parameters. Once again, we'll use our express, well, we'll use our iRequest. Why not? And then we'll have a response, which we'll do express.response. And then we'll have our next, which will do any. And then we'll do our arrow function here. And so we're going to do a big try catch block. And we'll have an E here, which what we're going to do is if there's an error of any kind, we're going to go to the status. We're going to return a 401, which is like an unauthorized. And then we can even send an error, something inside the error block, an object here saying you are not authorized. Okay, but otherwise we're going to try to do something. So we're going to try to grab the auth token out of the request that we just saved earlier here. And then we're going to use the user info, and we're going to grab some user info. So we're going to wait, and now we're going to use that verify token that we had earlier. So we have the verify ID token, and now we're going to pass in that auth token that we got by extracting it out of the request right here. Now, if that request, we're going to create a new variable called request.authID, and then we're going to add the UID to it. So this user info is what comes back, and it's going to have some Firebase stuff in it. It's going to have a UID, which is like just a variable that tells you a variable that's unique to that user. You could also grab like the auth time, the EXP Firebase. I think you can even do some more things with this user when it comes back. But that's all we want to do now is put it in there, and then we're going to return next, and that's going to go on to the next method, the next function there. So that's all we want to do here. Now it's giving us an error. It has implicit type of any, so we don't have a actually what we want to do here, this is not a function. There it is. And since we're doing what we're going to do here is, let me wrap this all in a get auth token, which now we can do an async function here. And now this try catch block should work. So I'm going to grab the try catch block out of here and put it in here. So now this will grab it, otherwise it'll return a 401. All right, so now we have everything in place for our auth middleware, and now we need to see if we can get that added to one of our routes here. So if we go into the check if authenticated, we can do that. But first, I want to check one other thing here. One other thing, I didn't explain that very well. So I have this get auth token. So we are essentially, this will get ran because we're running it here. So this is grabbing this const get auth token, and then we're running the callback from it and doing that. And that's why we have this auth token inside of it. Okay, so this should be pretty easy. I believe all we need to do is, if you look at the get, it has path and parameters and handlers, but you can actually, the second part of here is we can pass in the middleware that we want to use for this one. So we're going to do check if authenticated, and we need to just make sure it went ahead and auto imported, which is cool. And so we're going to save it. Now, if we try to refresh it, now we're getting you are not authorized. So let's go back into the front end. So we have all our changes in here. Let's make sure everything's saved. Still, you are not authorized. And what we need to do now is go to the front end and go to the secret, our secrets. So if you remember, we had the secrets route. And what we want to do is once it gets loaded, we want to try to get the ID token and then send it over. So how we're going to do that? So we're going to create an async mounted method. And this gets run soon as the secret route is mounted. And we're going to try to grab the token. So I guess what I need to do here is, let's do a couple things. I want a data object, and I'm going to have the secrets. So this is what's going to be returned from the API. And then I also need to import star as Firebase from Firebase/app, and then import Firebase Auth. And now we should be able to grab this token here. So I'm going to await Firebase Auth. And we don't have Typescript here, so I'll just have to make sure I get this right. Current user. Now I have a get ID token, and that should get the latest ID token, and it actually will refresh the token if it's expired too, which is cool. And now I need to create a config that we're going to use with Axios to send it over. So we just need to create headers here, and we're going to create one called Authorization. And remember what I said before, we have to have that bear token, and then we're going to pass the token in. Cool. So now all we need to do is use Axios to send it over. And we should probably wrap this in a try catch block or just catch the error if this fails, but we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to wait it. So we're going to have this dot secrets, and we're going to await this. And remember, we have that Axios object that's in one of our prototype instances for Vue. And we're going to get, and this time I know we're running on local host 3000/Erik. And then I believe we just need to send over the config as the second parameter. Yep, so config. And if that works, then I'm going to go to, I'm going to make sure it equals the data here. And now I have this big secret of data. So I don't know, I'm going to create a new H5, there we are. And then inside here, I'm going to do a for loop. So I'm going to do v4 secret in secrets. The key is going to be the secret.character ID, and that's just part of the API. And then we just want to show the secret.name. .name. Cool. So if this works, it should connect to this backend API. It will be sending over the bear token for the authorization, and it should show everything to us. So we'll need to open up our Vue Firebase again. We're signed out, so let's sign back in. Blackcom. And now it's going to try to load up the secrets. If I hit enter there, let's see here. Oops, let me try that again. Let me make sure I'm putting this password in right. Says I don't have a user called blah.blah.com. Let me take a look at my users. I have blah plus 123@gmail.com. Let me try that one. And I'm going to try to log in. Okay, so it logged in, but it did get a 401 error back. So I'll need to take a look to see what happened here. I have no errors here. So let's see, did it even get to So the question now is we have to take a look at what happened here inside the backend. So I'm going to take a look at the auth middleware, and I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting here. Just one sec. Okay. All right. I went ahead and actually fixed there. I had accidentally copied the wrong file, the wrong authentication file from my Firebase settings. So I copied the right one, and then I made sure I had the right export was still correct, and now it works. So if I go to the secrets, cool, the secrets is logging, and I'm getting all the information I'm supposed to. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope that guys help. I mean, if this is confusing, make sure you follow along with the GitHub and take a look at the code. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. Take care. Thanks.